Welcome in, Husker Extra 2-minute drill. It's the offseason edition. It's February 4th. We heard for about 25 minutes from Nebraska football head coach Scott Frost. Today, it's one day after signing day. It's sort of like a signing day / offseason update. Frost talked about cruising the North Shore of Hawaii with Tony Tuioti, and he talked about how he likes to go to Europe and see Europe with his wife. So he, like the rest of us, are sick of being constrained by the pandemic. Sipple.
Yeah, that one of the funniest discussions out there right now is, will Nebraska go to Ireland to play Illinois? It seems almost like a preposterous notion that we're talking about it at this point.
I've got my green on today. I'm just trying to keep the faith. But yeah, that's not likely to happen. And Scott Frost said as much today, among a lot of other interesting, I thought, sort of topics of conversation. So I guess let's just start there quickly. I mean, Frost basically said that he hopes, but that's a decision that's going to be made relatively soon, I think, about whether Nebraska is going to go to Ireland. It seems incredibly unlikely. And then that leads to sort of a host of other decisions about the 2021 schedule. Do they still play Illinois week 0 instead of week 1? Does that have any sort of cascade effect on the schedule? There's also a couple of games, Purdue and Wisconsin, the venues got changed during the shortened season this last fall. So like, even if college football returns to sort of a sense of normalcy in 2021 schedule wise, there's still some things up in the air for Nebraska in terms of its 2021 schedule.
Yeah, we'll see on all that. I mean, I don't think they're going to go to Purdue a third straight season, right? Purdue will come here.
Yeah, and that would mean that the Wisconsin game, which Wisconsin was supposed to come to Lincoln for a second straight season in this last fall, but didn't because of COVID. So that game, the most likely scenario is that they end up playing Wisconsin in Madison and Purdue in Lincoln, which those two games are flipped right now on the schedule, but we think that they'll probably change.
Okay, then also you were writing about the quarterback situation, and he did not want to engage in conversation about plucking a quarterback out of the portal until he sees what his guys have in the spring. Did I characterize that accurately?
Yeah, you did. And it's interesting. I thought it was interesting. He talked about, that they considered adding another player and maybe a quarterback from the portal before the semester started. But now that the deadline has passed, like Nebraska couldn't just bring in a player. They could, get a commit from the portal right now, but he couldn't actually start at Nebraska right away now, start school at Nebraska right away because of where we're at in the semester. So at this point, like you're talking about a kid who's not going to be here for spring ball no matter what. It would be after, it'd be the summer when anybody who commits now arrives just because of where we're at on the calendar. So there's really no rush for Nebraska to make a decision because they didn't over the winter, basically. Now that's a spring and summer discussion. So at this point, they're going to see what, in particular, Logan Smothers, Heinrich Harburg, and the walk-ons in the quarterback room, Matt Masker in particular, look like during spring ball before they make a final determination about whether they want to find somebody in the portal at that position. Nebraska's only got 3 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster right now, but you heard Frost basically beyond saying, yeah, we might think about it after spring ball. He did not want to talk about, it's just a hypothetical conversation at this point beyond that.
Yeah, he was asked what kind of quarterback he might look for. And yeah, that was a hypothetical he didn't want to address.
Yeah, he also said that he's been impressed with Logan Smothers and Heinrich Harburg. Harburg's obviously only been on campus for a couple of weeks, but with Smothers, it's just sort of he had a weird first year on campus, right? Nothing was normal. He got 2 spring ball practices, and then he was on the scout team during the season because they were getting Martinez and McCaffrey ready to play. So they're sort of just starting to realize or figure out sort of where exactly he's at in his development in terms of running their own offense. And he said that he thought his expectations for Logan Smothers are higher today than they were when Smothers signed with Nebraska a year ago.
Okay, as far as other topics, he has been consistent in Frost has been consistent in saying he likes his offensive pieces. He was like that a couple weeks ago when we talked to him, and he was probably even stronger in that vein today. as far as the skill positions go.
Yeah, it's interesting. He made mention of this a couple of times over the past couple of years, and today he said he sort of differentiated between experience and depth, right? Like at receiver, they don't have a ton of experience, but he likes their depth. He said the same thing, or similar, before the 2019 season. He said, I think we have a lot more options, even though we're losing Stanley Morgan, and that depth didn't result in the type of production that they wanted. So he likes where the depth is at, understanding that they don't have a ton of returning experience, at least Big Ten experience. So now the key becomes, turning that depth into functional depth and productive depth.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it goes along with that notion of his, that the defense isn't that far ahead of the offense. The defense is ahead of in experience, and what he told us before, so people understand, he said that defense executed better than the offense. But he doesn't, I just don't get the impression that he feels like the defense has a lot more talent than his offense.
Yeah, and they talked about the offensive line. He was asked about the offensive line today, and it's a young group, but he thinks it has a chance to be really good. And he said, nobody's better their first year of college football than they are in their second. And in that instance, he's talking in particular about Ethan Piper and Bryce Bennett. They obviously like what they have in Turner Corcoran. Cam Jurgens is the elder statesman among the sort of the guys are going to be involved in the starting group or at the near the top of the depth chart. But I thought it was interesting, and I bring these guys up a lot. He mentioned that group of older guys in that room: Brock Bando, Trent Hickson, Matt Sichterman. That's a group that is going to factor into this conversation. I mean, I think we tend to, and I think fans tend to think mostly about the younger guys in that room, but they have some depth, some older depth in that room that might be the difference. Maybe one of those guys wins a starting job, but the two deep is going to be littered with those older guys, assuming they all stick around and all of that. So it's a very interesting conversation all around on offense, because you can see the path to them being better in 2021, and that you have to counterbalance that a little bit with the notion that they have to be better in 2021, because obviously where they were at in 2020 is not going to win you a lot of football games.
It sounds like a good story for a beat writer to write.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that.
Hey, any other cleanup, any other details that you think the viewers should know?
Oh, there'll be a lot of details on HuskerExtra.com. He talked a little bit about health. Miles Farmer, who we talked to him about a little bit a couple weeks ago, Javen Wright, both at least limited basis will be involved in spring ball in some way, somehow. Spring ball is going to start the end of March, as we've reported. Thinks there's a chance they could have some fans and maybe some recruits at the spring game on May 1st. So all of that's sort of up in the air, but it's trending, as we move along here through the off season, that stuff will come further into focus.
Okay, Parker. With that, I think we can end it.
This is not a 2-minute drill. It's more like 8 or 10-minute drill. A nice long drive down the field in the off season. We'll have a lot more coverage at HuskerExtra.com. Thanks for watching.